Hello! Today's deck is super budget and super easy to build. We have Black-White Exalted. This mechanic was first introduced in Charge of Alara and made its triumphant return in Magic 2013. The main premise of this deck is to get a bunch of permanents with Exalted into play and attack with one creature at a time. So if we have 3 permanents with Exalted on the battlefield, our attacking creature that attacks alone gets +3/+3 until end of turn. One of the pros of this deck is that it allows us to only attack with one creature that can get buffed pretty quickly while our other creatures can stay and play defense. Now while that's a pro, that can also be a con. We are only attacking with one creature at a time, and that allows our opponent to block easier. We do have ways around that in this deck. I'll be using TCG Player for pricing. First up are the creatures. Our first 1-drop is Healer's Hawk. Healer's Hawk is a 1-mana 1/1 with lifelink and flying. It starts off small, but on turn 2 it can be swinging in as a 2/2 or a 3/3, depending on the Exalted permanents we have on the battlefield. As we get more permanents with Exalted, the Hawk starts swinging in for more and gaining us more life. Having flying is a great way to ensure our attack evades our opponent's blockers and gets through for damage. Our first Exalted creature is Duty Bound Dead. This is a 1-mana Exalted trigger on a 0/2 body. It can also be a decent early game attacker if we don't have our Healer's Hawk. It can also be a late game blocker because we're able to regenerate it for 4 mana. Knight of Glory is up next, a 2-mana 2/1 with Exalted and protection from black. This creature can be an amazing attacker and blocker if our opponent is playing black. It can't be blocked by black creatures and it can't be targeted with black removal spells. That's a big deal in the modern format. Fatal Push, Terminate, Abrupt Decay, you get the idea. So we have protection from black, let's add protection from white. Knight of Infamy is a 2-mana 2/1 with Exalted and protection from white. We have protection from 2/5 or 20% of the color pie. That's a great deal for a budget deck. Aven Squire is a 2-mana 1/1 flying with Exalted. We mentioned earlier how we are only attacking with one creature each turn, and a big drawback is that we sometimes might not force damage through. This creature gives us more evasion and allows us another aerial attacker if we need it. Last in the creature slot is Lone Rider. This is the best creature in our deck. There are Exalted triggers, this creature is swinging in for more than 1 damage each turn. This creature will usually transform after a successful attack, and then it becomes a 4/4 with First Strike, Lifelink, and now Trample. This allows us to smash through damage, and if this creature is not dealt with, it begins attacking for even more massive damage. This creature often doesn't even have to attack to transform. If we can attack with our Healer's Hawk with a bunch of Exalted triggers, this creature will often transform on the same turn that it's played. 24 creatures in total, which is a lot, but we want to get as many permanents with Exalted as we can on the battlefield. Now onto the non-creature spells. First up is Infernal Grasp. This is a 2-mana instant that allows us to destroy a target creature and we lose 2 life. Losing 2 life isn't much of a drawback in this deck, since our lifelink creatures will gain us more life with the Exalted triggers. Originally the deck had 4 copies of Murder, but I found the double black and 3-mana casting cost to be too clunky. Infernal Grasp is a way better option than Murder, and it doesn't cost too much to run it. Next up is Oblivion Ring. This lets us get rid of any permanent that we need to. We can use this card against a creature if we have to, but we most likely want to focus on our opponent's troublesome artifacts, enchantments, or planeswalkers, since we already have spot creature removal. Overall, Oblivion Ring is a very versatile removal card. Dusk/Dawn is a hilarious removal spell in this deck. None of our creatures have a base power over 2 unless we put our Exalted triggers on the stack. If we play this before our combat step, we can get rid of our opponent's biggest threat while still holding on to our Exalted army. Dawn lets us get back any amount of creatures from the graveyard to our hand, since all of our creatures have power 2 or less. We have a playset of Read the Bones. This spell lets us scry 2 and then draw 2 cards. We can dig 4 cards deep into our deck if we need to. 8 creatures in the deck have lifelink, and we can gain a decent amount of life, so paying life to get card advantage isn't too painful for us. Paying life to get card advantage is a good thing. Remember, life is a resource. Being able to have card advantage in the late game is very important, and once again, paying 2 life is very inconsequential while we dig through our deck to keep drawing action. Let's check out the mana base. We have 3 copies of Cathedral of War. We only have 3 of these because while these are great and give us an additional Exalted trigger, we don't want to have too many colorless lands in the battlefield, as we need both of our colors for the deck to run properly. The Cathedral also enters tapped, which isn't something we want to have early on in the game. 4 Godless Shrines are next. This is the most expensive card in the deck, and you don't need to run it if you don't want to. It's a great land card for our deck because it allows us to get both of our colors. 7 Plains and 7 Swamps, along with a Temple of Silence, finishes up the lands with 22 in total. We have 4 copies of Vanishing Verse. This can be a substitute for Oblivion Ring. The only reason why it isn't in the main board is because our opponent might have some powerful multicolored permanents we might not be able to target with it. If our opponent is running red-green and playing Rhythm of the Wild, or if they're playing a Wormcoil engine, this card won't be able to target either of those. The point I'm trying to make is while Vanishing Verse is an instant and Oblivion Ring is an enchantment, Oblivion Ring has more versatility. Once we know we can run Vanishing Verse in its place, we will absolutely upgrade. We have 2 copies of Rest in Peace to deal with decks that want to use their graveyard. This will help slow down decks that want to reanimate things or cast spells using Delve or Flashback. Leyline of Sanctity is up next. This card is amazing against decks like Burn and Discard who want to target you. It makes it a lot harder for them to interact with you. Our last cards on the sideboard are 4 copies of Revoke Existence and 3 copies of Duress. These cards allow us to get rid of our opponent's crucial game pieces. Duress allows us to pick cards from our opponent's hands that might give us problems, and Revoke Existence can get rid of troublesome artifacts or enchantments. And that's the deck. That's Black White Exalted. The entire deck costs around $75 to make it, and that's really only because of the Godless Shrines. You don't necessarily even need those in the deck at all, and if you put basic lands in their place, the deck is only around $25. Black White Exalted is an extreme budget deck that is able to stack on damage pretty quickly. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.